Hey guys, in today's video, I will talk about the key expression function for string and collection that we can use in our Power Automate flow. Hey everyone, I'm Deepak Srivastav. Welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking about the key expression function of string and collection that we can use in our Power Automate. Now, if you are already using Power Automate Flow, then you know what is expression. And if you have not, and if you are new to the Power Automate, the expression is the logic that you write in your Power Automate Flow, right? It can be maybe combining two strings together, or checking if your collection or array is empty or not, or comparing two array together, or finding a particular text in your string. So all of these different logic that you generally use in any of the application you can do in Power Automate as well. And for that you need to use a different function. There are different categories of functions in Power Automate. What we're going to talk about in this video mainly is string and collection function. Okay, so the first expression function that we're going to talk about is finding the first or the last item in your array. Okay, now why that is so important? So for that, let me create a flow. I'll show you why it is needed and where you should use it to avoid unnecessary actions in your flow. Okay, so for that, I'm going to create a flow. Okay, so this is my flow, very simple flow. I have a action for SharePoint called get items, and what the get items is doing, it is getting all the items from this sample list. Okay, that's in my SharePoint. What's going to happen now, if I'm going to run this flow, it will try to get all the items from this sample list that I have. In some scenarios, when we use this get items action, we also apply the filter, right? We apply the filter query to filter the information. Or in some scenario, maybe there is only one item in your list. Okay, there is not more than one item. So the response for this particular action is going to be just one item because you have only one item, or your query is making sure that you are already getting one. So in my case, I'm going to just add a query. And in the next step, if I go and add a compose where you can use this particular action to see the information that you're getting. So I'm going to select the compose. When I select or click on this input button, you can see the window. And then here I'm going to just select the title. Okay, I'll select the title, and this is what happened. Because the action get items returns an array, right? There can be more than one item in your Power Automate, in your SharePoint list. It's going to return an array, and when you're going to try to get any column information, it can be title or any other column that you have in your list, the flow is going to automatically add this loop. In the scenario where you are only getting one item, this loop make no sense because you know 100% you are only getting one item. So why this unnecessary loop presented? Okay, so to avoid this kind of scenario, the first expression function that I was talking about we can use. Now how you can access those expressions? If you click on any of the box, and I'm going to delete this one because I need to show you that. I'll click on the news tab, type compose, select that, and there is a tab called expression. This is where you can see all the different functions that those are available for us to use in our expression logic. Okay, under a string you can see all of these string functions. We're going to talk about some of these today. And under collection, you can see all of these different collection functions. We're going to talk about those all as well. Then we have some other logical, conversion function, math, date and time, and we will cover those in future videos. This video is only covering collection and string. Okay. If I go to the collection, there is a two function I can see here. It's saying first, return the first element in an array or string, and the last, return the last element in an array or string. So we're going to start with first. So I'm going to select that. It's very simple. It's going to just write it down first. Inside that, what you need to do, you need to pass the name or your array, okay, or your collection or your string. How you will do that? Once you complete and add this first under expression, I'm going to click on the dynamic content, and this is where you can see this is my action name, get items, and I can see the body and the value. So I'm going to select the value. So what this is going to tell me now, that give me the first element or item in this array. I'll click OK. Okay. Now if you notice, there is no apply to each loop happen, you are still clean. But then you may be wondering that, okay, this is going to give me the entire element, but I was looking for just particular property, let's say title. How I can do that? It's very simple, and this is where we are extending this expression. So we are saying first, so all of this entire thing is going to give you this entire list item. Okay. And if you need the title or any other column, the only thing you need to do, you need to add a question mark, bracket, single quote, and type the name of the column that you have. In our case, we are doing title, so I'm going to just do it, just say title. So now if you see, I'm still doing the same thing as I was doing before, right? I'm trying to get the title from this get items, but now my flow is very straightforward, and I'm only having one single action, and it's going to give me the title. So let's run this. Okay, so flow completed successfully, and if I go here, I can see the title. Okay, now let's move to the second expression function. Okay, still we are talking about collection, array, object, and strings. Okay, so the next function that I'm going to talk about is how you can compare two array, right? So for an example, I'm receiving one array and I already have an array, and I want to see and compare them, that whether the item in my first array exists in my second array or not. So how I can do that? So for that, what you can use a function called intersection. Okay, so how you can use the intersection function to compare two array. In general, the intersection function is going to allow you to find the common item between two collection or two array. Okay, and that's what we need. If you want to compare, we can just use the intersection. If I want to click on the new step, compose, okay, I'll go to the expression, and when I type intersection, there is the function. What it needs, as you can see here, it needs the collection 1, it can be object or array, and collection 2, it can be an object of array. So you need to pass the two array here to compare. Okay, so let's create two array that we can use to compare. So I'm going to use toCompose action. There are multiple ways you can create an array, or you can even get an array from your if you are querying SharePoint or querying any other data source. Just to keep this video short, I'm going to just create two of the arrays. It applies to any type of array that you are getting. So I'm going to go to the expression, and there is a function called create array, and I'm going to quickly create one array. Okay, so I created two array. One is just simple with the Power Platform, and then another one is just having some more information. Okay, a new step, compose. Now we are going to use that intersection function here. So I'm going to say intersection. We need to pass the name or two of our array or collection. So what I will do, I'll go to the dynamic content. I should see both of my compose here. So I'm going to select one, comma, and another one, click OK. So now what we are trying to do, we are trying to see if these two array that I have, if the array 1 that I provided here exist in this one or not. So let's run this one. Okay, so flow completed successfully. This was my array 1. This was my array 2. Any guess what is going to be in compose 3? There you go. Right. So now what we have done, without writing any loop or going through each item into the second array, we just use one function that actually compare these two array and give us the result. Now maybe in some scenario you are not really interested in this result, that what is common. You just wanted to check whether the item that I'm passing here exists into the array or not. So in this scenario, let's say if I change this array and just keep one item, we can confirm. I'm going to say Power Apps 22 update run. This time it should return me nothing, because Power Apps 22 doesn't exist into our other array. Cool, right? So now because this is returning as an empty or null, you can check that, and based on that you can take the decision. So this can be a good example where you can use this intersection function. Now let's move to the third function. So we talk about comparing two array and finding the common between two array, or checking if the one particular item exists into the next array or other array or not. What about removing the duplicates, right? So this is very common scenario. We receive an array and it has a lot of duplicates, and we want to remove those duplicates. How you can do that? So I'm going to quickly go here and do the same thing. I'm going to change this array. Okay, I'm just keep adding some duplicates also. Okay, so I created this array again. It has power apps, PBI, all of these duplicates. To remove the duplicate, there is another function also exists that's called the union. Okay, and what union does, it combines two array together. Now in both in the intersection and also in the union, if I pass my first array and the second array as the same array, then what they're going to do, they're going to remove the duplicate, and I'll show you, right? So I'll go to the dynamic content. Okay, so compose2 in my case is the array that has duplicate, and I'm going to pass the compose2 as my first array. Second array also I'm passing the same thing. Okay, so we are saying union and combine the same array together. Click OK. It looks a little trickier, but when you're going to see the result, you will understand what will happen. I'm going to save and run it. Right, flow completed successfully. And if I open this one, look at this. This was the original array. It has the PBI and power apps duplicate. And when I just use the union, same array, it removed the duplicate. I can also, instead of union, I can use the intersection here as well and pass the same array 2 times. So my first and second array is the same array. Click update, run it. Awesome, right? So this is another good use case of using these intersection union function to not only for the purpose what they have built to compare and find the common between two array or joining two array together. You can also use them to remove the duplicates. Perfect. Now let's move to the next expression function that I'm going to talk about today. It is finding if the given string is empty or not. I'm going to add a compose action again, and I'm just going to type a simple string. Now because for the demo point of view, I'm just keeping it simple. This string can come from your data source or from your other connector as well. Now let's say what we want to check whether this particular string is empty or not, right? Why we need that? Why you need to check if the particular string is empty or not, and I'll show you. Let's say I have a logic and I have an expression where what I'm trying to do, the string or the text that I'm getting, I'm applying a logic on top of that, and I'm splitting it, like splitting the incoming string using a function called split. We're going to talk about this function also, but for now just let's say, so I'm going to use a split function. This is my compose. Here I have my string. So what I'm saying, split dynamic content and split this by space. So I just use double quotes and space. Click OK. Okay, I'm going to run this flow now. Completed successfully. Split work. I'll talk about the split function a little bit more in detail in later part of this video, but this is good. Okay, so what if in the scenario I'm not getting this string, instead I'm just getting null from the data source. Now if I'm going to run this flow, look at that. The logic that I have wrote to split that fail. And what's going to happen if you don't pay attention to this, and if you release this flow to production, your flow may start failing if you start getting null. So this is the important part where you need to make sure that if you have these kind of string comparison, split, or all of these operations, make sure that you're checking whether the string really has any value or not. Okay, so to check the null, what we need to do first, we need to check whether the incoming string that I'm using in this split is empty or not. So what I'm going to say, if the string that I'm getting is empty, then just do nothing else, or if it is not empty, then the split. So for that, I'm going to use a function called if. As you know, if, I'm just saying a condition, if it is empty or not. And this is where I'm going to use a function called empty. It's very simple. It's just the empty, as you see the name. What it need you to pass the name of the collection, a string on array. In our case, we have the string, so I'm going to pass that. So if that is empty, then in the true condition, if this is empty, I'm going to just pass nothing. So 2 single quotes. And if it is not empty, then we're going to keep using or continue using our existing scenario or logic that we have. And then I'm going to close the bracket so that the if condition complete. So this is now if condition. Let me test the flow now. Awesome, right? So this time your flow completed successfully. So now you are foolproofing your flow that even if you're getting a null in a string that you are using in your logic, you can still work and continue in that. Okay, now let's move to the next expression function. The next function is very straightforward. Let me delete these first. Okay, so I still have my expression. And now some scenario what happened, let's say I'm creating a flow where I'm receiving some emails or it's based on the Outlook trigger. Okay, or maybe I have a description column in the SharePoint where lots of text people are entering. So what I wanted to do, I want to search a particular string or text into those description fields, or maybe in the email body. So for that, the function that you should always try to use is called, if you go to the expression and search for contains. Okay. Now what this function does, it allow you to search a text or a string into a collection or into a string. Okay. And it's going to return you the true or false based on the whether it find it or not find it. Okay, so let's say in our scenario I have my string here, so I'm going to go to the dynamic content, select that and say search for power. Okay, I want to search for this particular term in my previous string, run it, false, right? And that's correct because I don't have the power in my expression. Now a couple of things that you need to remember. If you are using flow, then you know there is another function that I'm going to show you. If I go to the string, there is a function called index of. Okay, now what this function does, so it works very similar to the contents. You're going to pass the string where you want to search, and then you're going to pass the text that you want to search in that string, and it's going to return you the index, like where it find that particular text. Now what is the difference between the contains and index of? Number one, index of is only going to work with the string. So if you have a collection or array, the index of doesn't work. The second, and I think this is very important one, is index of is not case sensitive. Okay, the contents is case sensitive. So if your search criteria is case sensitive, then you should use contents. If the search criteria doesn't really depend on the case sensitive, and if you don't want to worry about those things, then you can use index of if you are working on a string. Okay, so these are the two things that you need to remember when to select which particular function. Okay, so now let's move to the next expression function. We also have some time requirement where we want to replace a particular text in the string. Okay, and to do that we have a function called replace. So I'm going to go to the expression, search for replace. This is pretty straightforward function, the replace. It only works with a string, so you need to make sure that this is not a function for collection or array. And what it required, if you use this function, you need to pass the text in which you want to replace. So in our case, we are replacing into this one, the string that we have. Then it's going to ask you the old text. Okay, this is also case sensitive. Okay, so this function is case sensitive, so you need to pass the right case when you are trying to replace. So let's say and I'm going to replace with, okay, click OK, test, and what this function does, it replaces that particular text that you're trying to replace, and it's going to give you the new updated string. And as you can see here, so this was your expression before, or this was your string before, and after update, this is what you get. Okay, very straightforward, but very, very useful. Perfect. Now let's move to the next expression function. So next we're going to talk about the slice. Okay, if I go to the expression and if I go to the slice, first let's understand what this does. It's going to slice your string and give you the output. Okay, so for an example, let's say I have the string that we are using and I wanted to just slice the first 50 character. Okay, it's going to give me the first 50 character if I'm going to pass the start index and end index. So the start index and end index, you don't need to provide both. And based on what number you are passing into those index, you're going to get the right information or sliced information from your string. So slice dynamic content, and I'm going to say slice 5 first character and give me the result. I'll click OK, test, run, as you can see here, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's gonna count the space as a character also, so keep in mind. Wonderful, correct? If I'm go here and I'll say okay, slice, the starting index is 5 and then stop at 9. Correct? We said the start at 5 and stop at 9, so it's gonna just give you the 4 character. So you can do much, but that's not end here. Look what you can also do. You can also pass the negative number. Okay, so I'm gonna say minus 5. Okay, update and look at this. So you got the last 5 character. Okay, so if you have a long string and you want to get some of the last character, you can start putting number in the negative, right? So it's going to start from the very end. So you have a lot of options with the slice function to get exactly what you want from your string. Now let's move to the next function, that is split. I think we have seen that in my previous example. What the split function is very important when you want to convert your string to an array, right? So for example, this is my array and I'm going to change it because, so let's say I'm getting these, now these are the simple number comma separated 1 to 9 and it's a string. Now let's say I have a requirement and in this case it's just a number, maybe I'm getting a user list comma separated and I wanted to go through each and every user. Okay, very simple, you can just use the split function, pass your string. Okay, the only thing you need to make sure that it should have some common delimiter. It can be a space, comma, semicolon, colon, something should be there that you can actually split this. In our case we have the comma, so I'm going to use that. Click OK, test. So now we have this array. I can use this array, I can have a loop around it and create my logic based on that, right? Now let's move to the next expression function and I'm going to type a condition here, the conditional logic. Okay, we all know that we can compare two things together in this condition. And what I'm going to do here, what I'm saying, let's say this is my string, so I'm going to type here flow, just simple flow, single text, right? So I'm saying if the compose output or the flow is equal to flow, right? It looks true, right? This condition is true, always going to work. Perfect, no problem. Awesome, right? So expression is true, flow is equal to flow is no problem. And it goes back to my initial comment that I had, that when you don't control the data that you are receiving in your flow, you also don't control if this is going to have some space, right? So right now, if you look here, the flow that I have has some space. Look at the condition now. It's saying false. This is flow. What I'm comparing it with flow, but my expression had failed or my condition had failed. This can be a very critical scenario because your flow is going to complete successfully, but your logic is not going to work, though its flow is both are flow, because there is an extra space. To avoid those scenarios, always recommend it when you are using the text comparison. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the expression, search for trim. What trim does, trims leading or trailing white space from a string. I'm going to use dynamic content, go here. Now if I'm going to test the flow. Now the condition is true. Very important. I have seen many scenarios where it looks like everything is working as expected, but actually it's not because of these extra spaces that you got. Perfect. So this was the quick video of some of the basic or the key expression function that you can use for string and collection. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Keep learning, keep watching. Thank you.